Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am Lauren Bryant, and I'm a senior project manager with Boston Parks and will be the project manager for this really exciting project. Before we jump into the presentation, I just want to go over a couple of how-tos and what to expect tonight. Next slide, please. We didn't have any requests for interpretation for tonight's meeting, so the meeting will be in English only. We want to make sure that you know that we want to hear all voices, and we're able to offer translation and interpretation as requested free of charge. So please reach out to me if you'd like to request this for future meetings. My email address is Lauren, Lauren, .Bryant, BRYANT, @boston.gov. And I'm going to put a whole bunch of information in the chat for you later, and that will be one of the things. I also want to make sure that you know that tonight's meeting is being recorded and will be available in approximately 1 week on the project website. And if you haven't had a chance to check out the project website, we'll also put that in the chat for you as well. So in case you have friends or neighbors who were unable to join us tonight, please share what you learn and then direct people to our website for them to view the recorded meeting and presentation when their schedule allows. Next slide. So we wanted to let you guys know that there are multiple ways to engage tonight. We want to hear your thoughts. That's why we're here. So there are several ways that you guys can interact with us tonight. We're going to be sharing a brief presentation on the scope of the project and review the site conditions, but not to worry, we haven't designed anything yet. That's why we're here tonight. We want to listen to you, those of you who regularly use the Shattuck tennis courts and picnic area. And if a question pops up during the presentation, feel free to add it to the chat so we can make sure to answer it during the discussion portion of the evening. But please do only use the chat for comments related directly to the tennis project. If you're unfamiliar with Zoom, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a chat bubble. And if you click on that, that's where you can let us know any thoughts that you have. Once we're into the open discussion portion of the evening, we'd love for people to be able to unmute and share their thoughts with us. So please click on the reactions buttons at the bottom to be able to raise your hand, and we can help unmute you. And then hopefully that takes care of some of the housekeeping. I wanted to just check in on, a lot of people ask us what has been happening in Franklin Park since the action plan, which is a huge question because there was a lot in the action plan, a lot of amazing recommendations, but obviously we can't do it all at once. So what we are doing is starting a lot of projects, and we're very excited about those projects and initiatives that originated from the action plan, including the one we're here for tonight, the tennis court expansion. And there are several different ways that the work from the action plan is progressing. Some of it's going to be through the city's capital improvements program, which is where a lot of our park renovations come from. Some of it's going to be funded through the money from the Franklin Park Action Plan that came from the sale of the Winthrop Square Garage. Some of it's happening through the Franklin Park Trust, and still others are happening in-house with Boston Parks through our maintenance team. And for those of you who may not know what the Franklin Park Trust is, it was funded from $5 million from the Franklin Park Action Plan, and that money was put into an endowment. So the money from that endowment, the interest that comes off of that every year becomes available for us to spend after a work plan is approved by the trustees. So 70% of that interest goes into enhanced maintenance for the park. That's above and beyond our standard maintenance. So these are things that our standard maintenance crews can't get to, and we're able to do above and beyond. And then 30% is for programming. And that money goes to the Franklin Park Coalition. They have always done wonderful programming, but this trust allows them to really do more and be able to share more with the community. They do a lot of things such as music and arts in the park, dancing, nature walks. And for the trust, we're finishing our second year of projects and planning next year's work plan. And these are just some examples of the maintenance and programming that's happened over the first 2 years, but I don't want to read it all to you, but you can come back to these on the website if you want to see more. Next slide, please. We're also working on maintenance and operations and expanding that. That was a huge part of what we heard out of the recommendations from the action plan. And directly from that, we have added arborists to our tree crews, and that allows us to do additional tree maintenance in Franklin Park. We also have created the executive director for Franklin Park position. And that position is posted currently. Not only have we created it, it is posted, it's able for people to look at, and we're currently interviewing candidates. So if you know anyone who might be a good fit for that, please have them check out the City of Boston's Career Center website. And I'll also put that in the chat when I'm done talking. So we also have a lot of capital improvement programs and projects that are happening right now. So there's the Bear Dens Make Safe project, which you may have heard about. Amy Lene in our office is spearheading that one. And those are safety improvements for bear dens. And really exciting also from the action plan was that we have really been looking to get that Bear Dens property back into the care and custody of Boston Parks. For those who know the park well, that has been in the care and custody of the state. And so now that, as of this morning in a Parks Commission vote, is now back in Boston Parks care and custody. So that project can keep moving, which is very exciting. We're starting the Overlook study in conceptual design. That is the Overlook ruins. It's also the former home of the Elma Lewis Playhouse. So that is also a very exciting project that we're working on. We're going to be having a community meeting mid-November to early December. And so we'll be able to share some more information about that soon. The tennis project, which is why we're here tonight. We also are going to be doing a Circuit Drive traffic calming and drainage project. That RFQ is currently available. So hopefully in the next month, we'll have a designer on board. Then the last one that I'm going to talk about is the dog facility study. And that also came out of the Franklin Park Action Plan to really think strategically about where there could be dog facilities and what those could be within Franklin Park. So we also have a designer that's already selected, and we're in the contract phase for that. And also we have an email sign up list so that you can in one place look at all of those projects and check which projects you would like to get updates on. Or if you'd like to get updates on all of them, that's fantastic. So I will also put those in the chat as well. Next slide, please. Project team. So the project team, again, for those who might have joined late, my name is Lauren Bryant. I'm Senior Project Manager for Boston Parks and the project manager for this project, as well as several other Franklin Park projects. So feel free to reach out to me if you've got any questions. If I don't know the answer, I can hopefully point you in the right direction. We have lots of Office of Neighborhood Services reps from around Franklin Park. So depending on your neighborhood, feel free to reach out to them if you have some questions. The design team for tonight says that we, just a chat that will take care of the QR code in a few minutes. So the design team for the tennis project is Kyle Zick Landscape Architecture. And he has Jay Lee with him tonight. And then also David Nardone is on his team from Vision Sports Design. So this is a diagram to help people understand a question that we get asked all the time, which is, how does the decision-making happen in Boston Parks? Who makes those decisions and what goes into those decisions? So we just wanted to share this with you. It takes a lot of things to make the decision, and we take a lot into consideration. Community input, such as the community meetings tonight. Also, information that we've gotten from the community in the past and from years of collaborating. Janine from the Franklin Park Tennis Association has been amazing. So we take all of that history that we've heard as well from coordinating with the Franklin Park Coalition too. We use City of Boston priorities, which we'll talk a little bit about, and Parks and Recreation goals. And then there's also safety guidelines and regulatory guidelines. So here in Franklin Park, we're subject to Landmarks Commission. So making sure that we respect the historical aspects of the park, and also ADA as well. We want to make sure that this space is usable by all. So some of those City of Boston priorities are, making it expanding walkable access to parks, right? And that also is, the inclusion and accessibility within the site too, addressing equity, And I know that that comes into play here because I know that the tennis courts, there's not enough space for all of the amazing programming that the Franklin Park Tennis Association does. And so making sure that we can expand that program is huge here. And Parks and Recreation goals again, accessible and available to all, meaningful, inclusive community engagement. It's why we're here tonight. And we want to promote connections. And one of the best connections that I know of in any of our parks is the amazing program that the Franklin Park Tennis Association creates. And so I know that they bring the community together. And that's really huge, which is one of the reasons we are very excited to get this project kicked off. And with that, I am going to stop talking now and get a quick something to drink and pass it off to Kyle.
All right, thanks, Lauren. I'm Kyle Zick, a landscape architect with KZLA, and our firm will be leading this project, as Lauren mentioned. But what exactly is included in this project? You know, the project title is the Franklin Park Tennis design, but it's more than that. You know, I think that's one of the focuses. We want to look at the tennis complex because the action plan says it should be expanded and also upgrade and improve it. We're looking at tennis lighting, but we're also looking at the picnic area, the parking edge, and the pathways in this entire area. And I'll show you on a plan a little bit later exactly how far our project reaches. And the project schedule, you know, we are just starting here. Literally, you know, we're at the first few dots on this line of our schedule. So we're in the fall of 2024. Ultimately, I'll get to every one of these dots, but we're looking at construction in the summer or fall of 2025. How do we get there? There's a lot of steps. First, we start with our community meeting tonight. And tonight, we're just listening. You know, we don't have any, as Lauren mentioned, we don't have any design thoughts already. This is more about, tell us about this place. What do you think it needs? What should be improved? What do we need to know? And then we'll be back because we'll hear what you have to say, develop some design ideas, and come back to you in the early winter as we're continuing to develop things. And as they get more and more refined and we've gotten your input and we feel like we're heading in the right direction, then we have to get some of the approvals that Lauren mentioned. So there's the Boston Landmarks Commission and also Boston Water and Sewer Commission. And Boston Water and Sewer is because we'll make a water connection for drinking fountain, that kind of thing, but also the stormwater improvements we'll have to make. So then with all those things going forward, then we'll look to develop construction documents in late winter, early spring. And we'll have one more community meeting about that time to say, all right, we've confirmed the scope, we've tested the cost, and this is the project we're going to go forward with and see if you have any other outstanding questions. We'd go out to bid in the spring, and then after Juneteenth of 2025, the construction could start. All right, so next we start to get into the design process and how we do our research and review background information to really be informed of what we need to know for this project. And we start with the Franklin Park Action Plan and find everything that they mention about this area. So at first, you know, very high level, it says that Franklin Park should amplify magnet destinations. And one of those is this area right here. So, so this picnic area, the tennis area, it's all very positive, but there are things that it could do more. And then there was more specifics in the action plan in terms of the open space or the circulation. So just for orientation, they're showing 4 tennis courts. There's only 2 there today. So the tennis court expansion, and then preservation of the upper lawn for the picnic area, and then also the lower lawn where the ball field is. And then in terms of circulation, you know, this is identifying some paths. Here's the tennis court again, the picnic area, the ball field. So there's a network of paths here of different types, traversing different landscapes, but connecting these different features. And then they had a specific site plan as well, although remember at an action plan, you know, these very conceptual and high level. So the 2 courts would be expanded to 4. Some of the circulation changes a bit. There's a path through here that would be interrupted by this expansion, but you know, these are things that will work out as we go through this. But otherwise, the picnic area, is enhanced in its current location. And otherwise, we'll try to improve the edges and some of the other pathways and think about vegetation and protection of existing tree canopy. So then, separate from the action plan, we do our own research in terms of the original design. The action plan obviously was based on that as well. But here's the original Frederick Olmsted design, the lithograph for all of Franklin Park. And we've highlighted in red generally the area we're talking about. We'll zoom in. And I'll make this simple because I'll advance one more slide to show an air photo of, here's the tennis court. Go back to that lithograph. And interesting to see Ellicott Dale, and it says tennis grounds. So those tennis was played on the grass at the time. There were many, many courts down where the baseball field or the softball field is now. So we look at this, to see what were the pathways, what are the road system, what was the idea of vegetation framing spaces, what was open versus forested. That gives us, a basis or an understanding of the original design intent, and that will be important for us as we go to Boston Landmarks as well. So our project area is highlighted here in red. So we have our 2 tennis courts today. There's a path system. There's the road with the parallel parking. There's access at 2 points right now. And these paths intersect. There's a picnic area here with a number of picnic tables. And then the land starts to drop off, going down to the softball field. And then those paths continue into the woods. And then we have existing conditions photos. We know that the picnic area is very popular on a day-to-day basis, but also for Juneteenth. That this space fulfills a lot of needs for a lot of people. Works on a day-to-day basis for one person, someone riding their bike through here, larger groups, school activities. And then the tennis court, extremely popular for the programs that it supports and for daily use, but it also needs work. We found plans from 1997, which showed some of these improvements. And I was looking at air photos, and it looked like these tennis courts were paved sometime between, I only have an air photo in 1955 and one in 1969. It shows up in 1969. So sometime in that time period, these courts were built. So that's a little bit of just an introduction to the project and the scope, but there are some specific questions we hope you all can help us with, but I know you'll have questions or other comments as well. But what kind of improvements are needed for the tennis complex? How often are people waiting to play? That helps us understand with the expansion, how many courts and how to prioritize that. Are the courts used for lessons? Are there tennis camps or other community activities that are held here? What improvements are needed for the picnic area? How can the site better support Juneteenth? And then how can that parking edge be more welcoming? And are there other things we need to add, bike racks, drinking fountain, or other amenities? So hopefully that tees up some questions and comments, and we'd be happy to listen to you all in terms of your feedback.
Thanks, Kyle. So we are we're going to open it up to questions. So if anybody has questions in the chat, or if we have anybody that wants to raise their hand and ask questions, we can do that. There's a question in the chat about how many tennis courts will be removed with the White Stadium project. And that is not something that I have the answer to at this moment, but I just want to reiterate that this, or to say that this project came out of the action plan and is not a direct association with the White Stadium project. So this expansion was already planned prior to the White Stadium project. And the only thing that really the impact of White Stadium on this project is actually to maybe do it earlier than we would have if the White Stadium project wasn't happening. Kevin, let's see, let me get you to unmute.
Thanks, Lauren and Kyle. my question actually does relate to the tennis courts over by White Stadium, only in the sense of this, that we've heard in meetings about White Stadium that the Boston Public Schools is looking to this area to expand in order to have the school tennis program and tournaments there at these courts near Shattuck. And I guess my question then is, has there been any thought as to splitting, this one set of courts between the tennis association and other community uses versus what the school system would need out of it? And even if expanding the courts means sharing them with the school system, where does that leave us in terms of meeting the demand for tennis, both of the community and the school system? And maybe Mr. Esdale would be willing to jump in and give us some thoughts about that.
Avery, are you able to unmute?
I'm sorry. Ooh,
Hi, Avery.
hello.
So did you hear the question about Kevin's question about the school needs and uses for the tennis at White Stadium and how that's changing?
Sorry about that.
okay.
Yeah, I think it really presents an opportunity for us to do more. Under the current setup, or I guess the preferred setup is multiple courts in one area, more than two. In a match situation, 5 is ideal, but they can get away with 4. So I think in terms of this opportunity here presents an opportunity for us to create another space and site where we can not only practice tennis, but hold tennis matches.
Thank you, Avery. Kevin, does that help answer the question? Yes. Okay.
I understand the school system would like to use an expanded tennis facility there, but how often, what would the schedule be? How much would that take away from the community uses and the tennis association uses? If the school department now is going to be using those courts, how is that going to be coordinated then with community use is, I guess, my question. And really, how often do you think the school department would be using the courts and not have them available for the community?
So we are expanding these courts, and so there is room for expanded use of the courts as well. So I think that we know that the Franklin Park Tennis Association is an incredibly important partner for the community. And so I know that that will be a huge part of the permitting, is that we are not planning on taking away anything from the Franklin Park Tennis Association. And I don't know if that helps, Kevin, but that's not the point of this project, is to drive out the Franklin Park Tennis Association, because that is way too important of a community asset. And it's something Janine has been fighting for quite a while in order to get this project going and to enhance tennis here.
That's great. And I guess the one other thing that I would ask Kyle, maybe to look at, maybe he doesn't even have to talk about it now, but is there an opportunity for a 5th court by going into the woods? Some of the woods right there along the edge of the court that's on the east side are pretty scrappy, not terribly valuable woodlands. So is there an opportunity to maybe put a 5th court in there, if that's seen as a reasonable way of expanding as well?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, I mean, everything's on the table at this point. So I think as following this meeting, we will start to, develop some concepts and see what makes sense in terms of where we can fit courts.
I do want to answer one quick thing, Kyle. The one thing that's not on the table is just cutting down a bunch of trees. So in terms of the trees, the woodlands, all of those are incredibly important to the park. And we want to make sure that when we're doing these designs, our intention is that the designs will fit within the current treed area.
And then we have a few questions in the chat. We had one from Ricky Thompson. Could you clarify the financial structure for this project, and also our BPS tennis matches? Where are BPS tennis matches held now?
Absolutely. So Ricky, this project is a capital improvement program project. So this is coming out of the mayor's capital budget, not out of the Franklin Park Action Plan money. And then in terms of the BPS tennis matches, Avery, I don't know where those are held. Can you share on that?
Yeah, currently, we're at, Carter Playground. That's, really the only facility in the city that has, enough courts, for our matches. So we've been playing there, or at, we do some at Sportsman's Tennis as well. So, both areas that kind of, are working right now. And I think we're excited to learn about the Franklin Park Tennis Association. And I think like have that open up the lines of communication to kind of understand how everybody works and operates. Our competitive tennis season is March to June is the MIA season. And so that's, kind of the only time we're really allowed to be organized. But I think in terms of the sport of tennis, and it being a lifelong sport and the things that come with that, those are the connections we want to make in the community to be able to support the association, but also have the association support, the kids that are pursuing tennis right now.
Thank you, Avery. So just to confirm, this would not be the only place that you guys could play. This would just be an additional space if that was needed.
Correct.
And then Avery, there was also a comment in the chat that maybe you could help with, something about asking about a schedule for tennis. Is that something you could share with me that I could send out to the community?
Yep, happy to do that. I know Janine reached out to me and we connected on one of the other meetings, but I can go through you and get you the schedule. Just trying to track it down and get it all in, on one piece of paper from last year.
Thank you. That would be great. And then Kay, you have your hand raised. Let's go ahead and have you unmute, and then I will jump back to some of the questions in the chat.
Hi. Okay. I have a question, and then I also have a suggestion.
Yeah.
So my question is, you said the project is supposed to start in 2025, June. So my question is, how long is it expected to last? Because it will be an inconvenience not having a place to play tennis or your favorite place to go and play tennis. Also, when you do start redoing the tennis court, can you not put the pickleball lines on the same court as the tennis court? Can you make it solely for tennis players?
Both are really good questions. So to address the pickleball first, because that's the easiest one of the two, we don't have any plans of putting pickleball lines here. We know how important the tennis courts are in this, in Franklin Park. And so we don't want to take away that use by also adding in pickleball lines. It's something I've talked to Janine about quite a bit over the years.
Okay.
And then the second question, or your first question,
Yes.
was about, sorry, hang on one second. So then the first question was regarding, sorry, can you help remind me what that was after I got off track?
Okay, no problem. How long? Just an
How
estimate.
long? The construction. Thank you. So the reason that we are doing the construction when we're talking about doing it, two things. One, it's based on when our budgets are available from City Hall, right? They're on an annual fiscal budget. We also have construction timeframes. We can't do construction during the winter, but we also want to make sure that we are avoiding Juneteenth. We know how much this space is used so heavily for Juneteenth, and that's incredibly important. So we want to make sure that we don't start something in the spring and then not have it completed in time for Juneteenth. So we're waiting until after June 19th in order to start construction. And we understand that it is always a challenge when any of our parks are out of use. But unfortunately, when parks are most wanting to be used is also construction season. But that's the reason for the thinking on the time, is really about making sure that we don't disturb Juneteenth.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm going to answer a couple more in the chat really quickly, and then Stephen will get to you. So here we go.
We had Marilyn Chase. So her question said simply, right now there are 4 courts total in Franklin Park. If we are in fact expanding, does that mean more than 4 courts in all of Franklin Park?
So what that means is, like we were saying earlier, we're looking at possibly 4 or 5 here. So that's what we're currently looking at with the scope. Let's see. And thank you from District 7 office, from Councilor Anderson's office, for joining us tonight. Please let us know if you wanted to say anything. Oh, there you are. Let's see. Hi, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, yes, sorry. Just wanted to reiterate what I wrote in the chat, that if anyone has any feedback that they would like to share with the counselor, if anyone has any feedback that they would like to share with the counselor and maybe they don't feel comfortable sharing it here, or would just like to CC the counselor on any correspondence regarding this project, feel free to email tanya.anderson@boston.gov. The email is in the chat, and you can chat me if you would like me to send it to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Stephen, can we have you unmute too?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I'm Steve Kostowski. So, yeah, I actually had a same question as someone else about whether you would paint pickleball lines on those tennis courts, and I'm glad that you are not going to do that. But then I guess I have another question is has there been any thought to creating dedicated pickleball courts there? And the reason I'm asking this, so I live in Jamaica Plain. I've been involved with a group of people who have been meeting regarding there are 2 tennis courts on South Street. It's called the South Street Mall at the court. Yep. You know that, okay? So, yep. And one of those tennis courts has a basketball hoop on each end.
Correct.
And until recently, those courts were used for tennis and basketball. And then beginning with the pandemic, and especially after the pandemic, they've been pretty much taken over by pickleballers.
Yes.
And there have been some community meetings about that with city representatives, city officials, representatives involved, Ben Weber's office, the neighborhood services. So anyway, I guess, I'm just wondering if there's been any thought to adding, instead of 1 tennis court, making that like 3 pickleball courts.
It's a good question. And like Kyle said, we're here to have those conversations and to hear what the community thinks about that. My understanding from the conversations I've had in the past is that people really wanted to reserve this space for tennis, and that if we had a couple pickleball courts, then the others would become pickleball courts with people bringing their own nets. And so I think there was a concern about, like you said, the space being taken over. So currently we haven't been thinking about that, but if there is, an overwhelming desire for people to add that, I think that would be really helpful for us to hear. And just because I know people are interested in pickleball courts, I am dropping in the chat a list of the pickleball courts that are standalone and ones that you need to bring your own nets for. And so I wanted to share that as well in case that's helpful for people who do enjoy pickleball.
And I just want to add a little bit on background with that is at the same time, so there were 4 tennis courts over by English High School, kind of like behind Ethos. And those have been renovated along with the basketball courts have been renovated. And now, so one of the 4 tennis courts was converted to 3 dedicated pickleball courts, just so that, there would be battles over, over the courts. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Sarah, we're gonna get to you too. I'm just trying to go back and forth between the chat and people, so I will get to you in just a second, Sarah. I also want to some people were asking about the school system and being involved with the youth. So I know that we were trying to clarify with Avery that isn't going to be a main location. It's somewhere that they could use in addition to places that they currently use. But I also want to make sure that people know that when we do permitting, we do preferential for community like the Franklin Park Tennis and also for youth sports. But we will be, like I said, making sure that the community does get the priority. So the other things in here, let's see, financial structure we talked through. Okay. BLA high school coaches here, that's awesome. Please let us know if you have any thoughts specific to the courts.
And then we had one question asking, can the city do something that allows us to play in the snow or winter?
So typically we don't plow or shovel those courts. We could talk to maintenance about it. I know that that's not something we traditionally have enough staff for, because we do have to do the we prioritize the sidewalks that we're required to around parks and any circulation routes within parks. But I could ask if that's something that that could be added in, but I know historically that's not something that we have the staff for.
And then there was another question in the chat in regards to relining. I thought the city policy was that relining of courts must include pickleball. Is that the current rule?
That is not a policy. It's something that we have been implementing in places in some of our courts, like the ones that I put into the chat. But no, it is not. It's not a regulation that happened. Okay, Sarah. Let's see if we can get you to unmute. Are you able to?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi, Sarah.
Okay. Hi. Quick question and a request. The request is I was listening in the car. I'm home now on the phone. Hard to access the chat or save it. At least I don't know how. So will you be able to save and share the chat with those links and all?
Yes. So what we typically do is we get that chat and we don't necessarily share people's names, but all of that information gets put into the meeting minutes. And then that gets shared out and put onto the project website. So those links will be on there.
Good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And the question is, I heard I'm a little confused that this project is separate from White Stadium. It came out of the action plan, but at just coincidental timing, maybe at the White Stadium meetings, there was talk about removing those courts. And I think a lot of people thought this expansion was those courts being moved here. If they're not being moved here, people who live on that side of the park and were used to having tennis, will there be a relocation or are those just going away?
So in terms of a relocation, that I'm not sure in terms of the other side of the park, because this project is really about the magnet destination from the action plan, which was the expansion of these courts and that edge and the picnic grove. And so this wasn't about tennis everywhere in the park or where else tennis should be in the park. So that could be a potential next conversation. But this really was about the Ellicott Dale magnet within the action plan and the expansion and the edge along the parking there. So in terms of that question for tennis on the other side of the park, that we'll put that in our notes and we'll think about that in future projects. But right now, this is really only about this space, if that makes sense, Sarah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, looking at the chat. Tom, are you able to unmute?
Yes, have I successfully unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I have serious concerns regarding the Lower Meadow area and the impact of any project on that. That is one of the very few, almost all the time, wet areas in Franklin Park with a natural water source. We've got some legacy trees in there. Probably one of the biggest sugar maples in the entire city is in there. My concern is that what's happening up on the top of the hill around the tennis courts is going to follow gravity down the hill, and there's going to be a bad impact on that important wetland. So I want to be assured that protection of that wetland is going to be a high order concern for whatever happens in this project, period.
That's a really great point. Kyle, could you talk to that point?
Yep. So as we expand the amount of pavement, we have to go to Boston Water and Sewer. And because their mandate is to make sure that we infiltrate stormwater, and they will make sure that we don't change how much water we shed out of our project area, more or less. So you're referring to the Lower Meadow, it will be the same amount of stormwater that goes there as it does today.
Thank you, Kyle. Janine, are you able to unmute?
Hi, everyone. I'm
Hi,
Janine with
Janine.
Franklin Park Tennis, and we are really excited to see this come to this point of, a design plan. We have been advocating for many years to get additional courts. In all honesty, we, provide programming for a long time, and we found back in 2008 that we would get overwhelmed. We'd advertise the program and we'd get overwhelmed. And we'd have 50 people on a court, and we just couldn't do that. So there is a desire for more tennis, and we want to be able to provide that, and we couldn't do it on 2 courts. Franklin Park is home, hence Franklin Park Tennis Association, and that's where we'd like to be. There are things that we're looking for. We're excited to hear about lights. We're interested in restrooms of some sort. We're interested in having the water source. We have concerns about parking. The partnership with the Boston Public Schools is new. We haven't had any discussions. I'm learning more now what that might require, but I'm excited that if we have more lights, we also have more hours. So it may be something that could easily be part of what we do. And we're all learning as we go along. So I know, some of us have a lot of questions. We all have questions. I have questions, everyone. And, I'm just excited to be here and be having the conversation. So, most of our players, I represent a group, so most of our players are against pickleball in the park, but I am a pickleball player. So, so it's something that we're all negotiating. So, it's something that we can talk about and work through. But like I said, I just wanted to say, we're excited to be here and be a part of this conversation, and we're looking forward to that. The other piece that I would like to mention is, the 5th tennis court is new to me. However, my thoughts on that were, if we have space for additional things, I think I'd probably be more interested in having some kind of structure. If we're having a lot of kids there, someplace, if it starts pouring, that we have a place for kids to go until their parents get there, or, if they're walking around the park. So, that was my initial thought, that, 5th court would be great, but, what would be better is to have some programming space, beyond, Franklin Park Tennis also does yoga and things like that. So just community space, gathering, throughout the year. So some kind of structure in my immediate mind came to me. I don't know what other people think. I don't know about, someone mentioned a bubble. I'm not sure about that and how that fits into the park necessarily. So there are a lot of things on the table, and I think if you have ideas, you should say them. But, definitely there's this is going to be a process. So, those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Janine. And I'm very excited too, because I know you and I have been talking
Yeah.
about this for years and years. So to comment on a few things that you were saying, the lights, yes, we are planning on lights. That was another question in the chat as well. One of the other things that you had mentioned was some place for kids to be out of the rain or even out of the sun to cool off. So Kyle, is it possible to go back to some of the master plan pages? Because one of the things that the magnet destination that we looked at was, is it maybe 4? Yes, the pavilion shade structure, but is there jumping back? So we were looking at that edge along the parking and what could that be to become a more welcoming space, right? So maybe that is some seating, maybe it's some kind of a shade structure somewhere that, portable toilets could be brought in, something that, that space is not just tennis and not just picnic, it becomes a magnet space within the park. So I completely agree. And in terms of the 5 versus 4 tennis courts, that's what we're starting to look at now. We're trying to just understand what the need is, what the desire of the community is. And, like we heard, there's wetlands, there's trees, there's topography, goodness knows, there's a lot of pudding stone outcroppings, right? So there's a lot of natural elements within this park. And so there's only so many ways that tennis courts could fit, right? So that's what we're going to be looking at next after we gather this information is what are the possibilities? And one of the things that we've talked about is maybe in our next community meeting where we have some ideas, Kyle and I have talked about maybe doing that out on site and having where those tennis courts could be staked out with tape. And so then it's a lot easier for people to visualize it too, standing out there. So that's another thing that we talked about potentially for the next meeting. I'll just have to bundle up.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janine. Karen, are you able to unmute?
Yes, Karen. There's probably
Yes.
okay.
Oh, yes, you, Karen.
Hi, Karen Money Brodek with the Emerald Necklace Conservancy. Thank you for focusing on this area. I know this is definitely a priority in the action plan, and I know Jean and others have been doing such great work on those in the courts with kids, and have wanted more courts for a long time. I think that's one thing that's really challenging about this is that at the same time that this project is going on, and perhaps it's not part of this proposal, but the two tennis courts at White Stadium would be lost in what we've seen so far. So if you put 2 courts here, then you really only at net 4, you actually haven't gained any tennis space in Franklin Park overall. I love the idea of as many courts as possible, but I also know that there is green space and trees, and it looks like the White Stadium proposal, we might be losing 70 or 100. The number keeps changing. We don't know what it is for sure over there. So that's what's so challenging about the White Stadium project is that the fact that there were tennis courts that were going to be lost in that was not something that anyone knew. And that's what I don't know, maybe some folks did. And that's what's so problematic about the White Stadium proposal is that alternatives and options were never discussed with the community. It was, this is the proposal for the demolition of the stadium and the expansion of the stadium and the loss of the 2 tennis courts and the relocation of the basketball court and the loss of up to 157 trees. And that is unfortunately why, we are still in a legal matter, and there is a court date for that in March. That's not what, of course, we would want to do. Because I do think that what the action plan told us is we wanted more tennis courts in Franklin Park overall, not less, or not the same number. And when I hear that you're going to have 4, it means that it's the same number effectively. And 5 would be great potentially, but I do think that's kind of a tight area. And there's some really big trees. I believe there's a tree that's a heritage tree or a couple of heritage trees in that area. And all trees are special. I'm not saying, we don't, but so it's a struggle because I do want us to be able to, I do want the city and all of us to fundraise and get all of these things we want, but I'm worried that this investment is going to result in no more tennis courts for the park.
I completely hear what you're saying, and I know that sentiment has been said in the chat a few times, and I agree. And at the time that this project was conceived, you're right, we didn't know what was happening with White Stadium at that time, right? So I just want to remember that this project is about the expansion of tennis here. And in terms of the expansion of tennis in Franklin Park, I think that's a different conversation. This is expansion of tennis at the Shattuck picnic area. And that's working on this magnet destination. And in terms of adding or relocating other tennis to other parts of it, I understand how it is connected, but we can't put, I highly doubt we can put 6 courts here, right? So this spot, this area is probably not where relocation is going to happen, right? This is expansion of the Shattuck tennis area.
Yeah, I agree. I will say that in the White Stadium process, people have talked about the fact that more courts are coming to this area. So it's been talked about as a way to make up for that, when actually we know that this area needed to be expanded anyway, according to the community's desires in the action plan that you worked on. And that's what I don't know, is if the Park Commission or others were really realizing that we're not really getting a gain in courts at all, as the city's plans for the park right now get added together. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Prabhar, I'm sorry if I did not pronounce that properly. Are you able to unmute?
Yes, I'm able to unmute now. Maybe you can see me. My name is Prabhakar. I'm really excited about this project. And I've been playing at the Franklin Park area since the pandemic. A couple of words about the pickleball court. I just want to put my hand up and say I'm not in favor of having a pickleball court there. A couple of reasons. One is that, we've always been waiting for an expansion of the tennis courts, and there are more than enough people to fill the courts and provide a training program. Pickleball, apart from it being a game, there is some data that the sound made by pickleball is up to like 85 decibel points, and though it cannot cause permanent hearing loss, the repetitiveness of that can be really annoying and distracting for tennis players. And I can tell you there are really high-level tennis players who play there, and we like to preserve that area to be just for tennis. So that was the comment I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Sandy, are you able to unmute?
Did you say Andy?
Oh, sorry, Sandy. Andy, sorry. We'll grab you in just a second, okay? Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, I just want to echo the sort of frustration, I guess, that siloing of projects, that at some point during this project, it would be really nice if parks could look broadly at the overall tennis in the park. Because, one thing does affect the other, and it's so eventually we would like to know. And I understand that different projects have different managers, but overall it is parks. And so at some point along the way of the public process regarding this particular area, it would be nice to have a bigger picture of the park and the tennis, facilities. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is the red outlined area on the slide that's on the screen right now. It cuts off right at the gate near the tennis courts that goes down to Scarborough Pond. And that gate and the parking that's available down there has been a source of a lot of discussion and consternation, honestly. So if the project is going to be concerned with parking for this new facility, that area that goes beyond the gate that's not currently within the red lines ought to be considered part of it, because that there's a lot of parking down there, and there's a lot of usage that the people who want to use the pond and take walks up in the woodlands there also use the same parking area as the tennis, and it can be a source of a lot of friction. So this really doesn't seem to be any need for that, and it should, I would hope, be a consideration for this design project.
Thank you, Sandy. Yeah, when that gate was put in, it was not intended to be closed all the time, and it's something that we're working on internally with Parks. So I appreciate that comment as well. Andy or Andrew, are you able to unmute?
Yeah, I think. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Hi, thank you for joining us.
Okay, so I'm Andy Crane. I'm the boys tennis coach at Latin Academy. I've been involved in high school tennis since the mid 90s, first at Latin School and then at Tenacity. And I'm also involved at Sportsman's and big fan of Franklin Park Tennis Association and Janine and what she's accomplished. Many of the kids from my team and my programs have worked with them. And it's obviously a terrific program. I just want to clarify and add to what Avery said about high school tennis. I think it's a really important consideration here. There are only two places in the city where you can hold a proper high school tennis match, one public place and one nonprofit place. And that is Carter Playground, which is now maintained by Northeastern, very high quality maintenance. They have contractual rights to use those courts, the 5 courts there, in the evening and some other times. High school tennis is permitted by the Parks Department to use those courts in the spring during the spring season in the afternoons, stopping at 6 o'clock. There are lights there. The community uses those courts in the evening. And of course on the weekends. High school tennis does not happen on the weekends. The other place has been Sportsman's, and we really couldn't have run high school tennis in the city without Sportsman's because they have the courts. You need 5 courts to run a match. If there were a 5th court here, it would make a huge difference for high school tennis to be able to hold matches there in the afternoon during the spring. Sportsman's is going through renovations. Their outdoor courts are going to be limited for the next few years. So right now, I actually work with Avery and I do the scheduling for the Latin Academy boys team and the Latin Academy girls team. And by the way, my team they both are co-op teams. I have kids from 8 or 9 different high schools every year who come to play on my team. And we really would struggle to set up another high school team right now, even if we had all the kids, because there's no place to play. So if there were a 5th court here and we could use these courts for a limited period, just like we do down at Carter. The community uses those courts at Carter, the Northeastern uses them. We use them for a limited time, typically from like 2 to 6 in the afternoon on weekdays from March until June. And it just would transform what we can do with high school tennis in the city. And quite frankly, in my opinion, the kids in the city who learn to play tennis at Franklin Park and learn to play tennis at Sportsman's and learn to play tennis at Tenacity get shortchanged to a certain degree because they're all on my team and I've got like 35 to 40 kids who sign up for tennis, and that's pretty tough for 2 coaches to deal with. We don't cut, we accommodate, but it's a challenge. So as the programs, these other programs like Franklin Park grow themselves, there are going to be more kids who want to play high school tennis, and we need a 3rd facility where that can happen.
Thank you. I appreciate that input. That's very helpful information to have. Laurleen, I know you were saying, you sent me a message that you weren't able to, you were having a hard time getting your hand raised. Can you unmute?
Can you hear me, Lauren?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Thank you. Janine kind of hit on most of my points.
Okay.
And I think you, Lauren, kind of clarified, because I mean, I walk Franklin Park every other day, and I did, a couple of hours ago, and I'm like, no, there's only 2 tennis courts. Where are people talking about that there's 2 more? But there is 2 courts there. When you do add the other 2 courts, are you going to go in front of it, or are you going to go behind it where the trees are? I know that some of the trees, just in walking, are like completely falling down. And if there are any old trees that need to come down behind the existing tennis court, that would be great to remove those, because they're old and they can fall down. Also, I would love to have restrooms that are covered and not porta potties. But we definitely need restrooms. I have to, walk all the way to the golf course and rush on my second time around because there's no restrooms available. The one porta potty that was there, it was closer to the softball field, and I don't think it was ever serviced. I've opened it. It's no longer there, but it was absolutely disgusting. So if we are going to have porta potties, can we just make sure that they're really maintained? And the other thing were the bleachers. Something that when you sit on it, it's not going to burn your skin from the sun, the material of the bleachers. And thank you, Lauren, for waiting until after Juneteenth to start this construction. But as far as the picnic tables, I think there's only 2 or 3 over there now. I'm all for picnic tables, but I also love the ground space. I love to bring my blanket, throw it on the grass, and sit. So I'm just curious, concerned about where the additional picnic tables would go. And thank you, Coach, for reminding me. I was trying to think of the tennis folks that use it in the summertime. It's Tenacity. So thank you.
Thank you, Laurleen. I appreciate all of those comments. And in terms of the question about where those other tennis courts would go, that's what we're going to find out with this project, is what our options are and what the space could accommodate. So that's one of the things that after we get the feedback tonight, Kyle and his team are going to go back and take a look at this space and see what the options are. Where could we expand here? What would that mean? And in terms of the comment, and there was one in the chat as well, in terms of questions about some of those dead trees, there were a couple comments about that too. So one of the things that when we do a project at Boston Parks, we go in and do a tree assessment, and we look at those trees to say, which ones are healthy, which ones are dead, which ones are a safety hazard. If there are things that are concerns, then we will do a tree assessment with arborists. There are independent arborists, and then the City of Boston arborists will also take a look at those. And then that way, if there are dangerous trees, if there are hazard trees, if there's anything that, we need to prune for the future health of trees, we can do that as part of this project as well. So that is something that we also will be doing. So I appreciate those comments. And then the other thing that I do want to talk about, I know a lot of people are very concerned about the difference between relocation, expansion, number of courts. But if we could table that until the next conversation, and tonight, I would really love to hear some things like, comments about bleachers, about porta potties, about lights, about, facilities here, so that as we're looking at those concepts, we can make sure that a lot of those wants for the community, that we can take a look and see what would fit here. Because it is that picnic area, it's that parking edge, it's making this space feel welcome as well as tennis expansion. So if anybody else has any thoughts, and feel free to put them in the chat too, about other things that we should know about tennis here that would be helpful as we're working on those concepts.
Lauren, we have one question that says, from Richard Banks, might it be possible to include a backboard or hidden wall in conjunction with the tennis courts?
I think if that's something that people would use, that we could definitely look at that. That's a great suggestion. Thank you. ADA accessibility, absolutely, Laurleen. That is always part of what we look at with our projects. And I know that we did a little bit of a quick project a few years ago just to get an accessible route into the courts. So whatever we do here will definitely have that accessibility component for sure.
We also have,
go ahead. Sorry, Michael.
we have a question from Ton Jacobson. So this project is proceeding with zero current info about the disposition of the Shattuck.
Right. This project is separate from the Shattuck, and I don't have any information on that project. And then in terms of questions about porta potties versus permanent toilets, we have very few permanent toilets in the Boston Parks department in general in our parks because we don't have staff for those and we don't have the ability to staff them, which is why typically if there are restrooms, they're porta potties that are usually provided by leagues. So we can take a look at that and see if this is a location that we should be doing that and putting some kind of an enclosure as well.
And then we also had Janine mention there are guidelines about the orientation of the courts with regard to the sun. Current courts are not properly oriented. Can we explore that as part of the process?
Absolutely. And David, I don't know if you want to jump in. David Nardone on our team is our sports specialist. So David, I don't know if you want to address that question. Are you able to unmute?
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, that's definitely something we'll be looking at. And, but again, we have all these natural features to accommodate as well. So I think, probably the goal of providing more program with, the forecourts, and then the next thing would be, the orientation. So it's definitely something part of what we'll look at. Definitely.
Thank you, David. Kevin mentioned dark sky compliant lighting. Absolutely. We'll definitely be looking at that too. Planned maintenance. So the maintenance of the courts will be the same maintenance through Boston Parks standard maintenance. If we realize that this expanded facility needs a different type of expanded maintenance, that could potentially be something that could happen through the Franklin Park Trust that we talked about earlier, which is an expanded maintenance or an enhanced maintenance than we typically have. But we'll see how that plays out after it's opened. Higher fence and backboard. Okay, so seems like we have somebody that's renamed themselves maybe as Laureline. But ADA definitely will be, regardless of who said that one, we definitely will be looking at that. Grass or clay court is not something that we have in our, that we have right now. If that's something that people are interested in, we could take a look at that as well. It's typically something that we don't have the ability to maintain, which is why we have the asphalt currently. Stephen, is there a Franklin Park master plan? So there is an old, there's an old master plan, and then there's the Franklin Park action plan that we just completed. And so I can put the address for that in the chat. And this project is a direct relation of, or direct project that came out of the Franklin Park action plan. Okay, so I will get that and stick it in. Let's see. A separate backboard and fenced area would make a lot of sense. Similar to one at Almont, that's a great comment so that we can make sure that we take a look at how that one is done in Almont, if that one seems to work well for folks. Perfect. I think I know there were a lot of comments in the chat that we have addressed through other questions. If there's something that we didn't get to that you think we missed, please raise your hand, let us know. But I do want to just make sure we're keeping an eye on the time. We've got about 15 more minutes. Did anybody else have any thoughts about the design of the courts or about amenities or facilities that they'd like to see here? And then I did put the action plan website in the chat. And June, thank you for the question about water fountains. We are looking at all of those kind of site furnishings, drinking fountains, bike racks, potential, one of the things from the action plan was potential blue bike location at some of the magnets. So that could be something here, bike racks, blue bikes, water fountains, all of those things are things we're talking about. I don't see any other hands or any other comments in the chat coming in. Oh, Karen. Okay, can you unmute?
Hi, yeah, it wouldn't let me raise my hand again. I don't know.
Okay.
But I mean, I think that the action plan, which was, a very, very strong document, talked about the desire to have increased tennis courts. And so it is challenging to think about the fact that we're really losing tennis courts with the White Stadium.
Karen, I know we really want to stay focused on the expansion of these tennis courts. We're not talking about expansion of tennis courts in Franklin Park in general. So tonight I'd really like to focus on the expansion of these courts, if we could, please.
Okay. Well, and I like the idea of there being water fountains. I know that's something that Jean and others have been talking about for years, wanting to get water fountains in there. We tried to when we fundraised and put in the 5 water fountains around the park a few years ago. This was an area we wanted to put water fountains in, but we learned that it was going to cost a lot because of all the rock in the ground. So I definitely think that would be important and valuable. I think the challenge is a little bit the slope and some of the other conditions there and how many tennis courts you could really fit there.
Exactly.
And I definitely would not want to see that the new tennis courts, would now be used in ways that would displace the current users. I think we want ultimately a net expansion. And I think, I guess I'd be interested to know in the future, your future reviews. It sounds like this is going to be a very quick design if it's going to be in construction next year. Is that right?
Not crazy quick. We've got, 6, 7, 8 months worth of design.
Okay. Would this project require going into the Conservation Commission?
It will require Landmarks Commission. Kyle, can you confirm? I don't think we're in any Concom jurisdiction, correct?
Yeah, I don't know of any Conservation Commission jurisdiction here.
Okay. Because I didn't know, someone was mentioning something about some wet areas earlier. I didn't know if that was the case. I also love the idea of restrooms. Big fan of public restrooms, but I don't know if that's something that could be accommodated in the project budget. And again, the Emerald Necklace Conservancy would love to partner with the city and others to fundraise and do more here, as we have said and as the action plan contemplates. Would love to have the opportunity to really do as much as the community and the city and others would like in these locations. I know there's been a ton of infrastructure money that has been out there, Land and Water Conservation Act funds that have been available in the last few years. Has the city of Boston applied for any of those grants for this tennis court or the Franklin Park? I've not heard of any applications for any of the federal infrastructure or state infrastructure money for Franklin Park, despite the fact that there's been a lot available.
As far as I know, and I'm not involved with going after all of the grants, as far as I know, there are no projects that I'm working on that have gone after those, but I could take a look and ask folks at Parks and get back to you on that, Karen.
Yeah, it's a really amazing time for a bunch of federal and state money, and we were able to bring $200 million to the other end of the necklace with federal and other transportation dollars. And I would hate to see that Franklin Park wouldn't get part of essentially the WPA era that is going on right now, and has been towards investment in a park in these high need areas. So I know that there was a celebration of a tree grant that was gotten by the city in Franklin Park, but I believe that those funds are for tree planting outside Franklin Park. They're for areas that don't have trees. So I don't know of anything. And I think it's a really important time to try and capture as much as we can for this park. So
thanks, Karen. And in terms of, we do have a lot of federal grants elsewhere in the Parks Department that we do go after. So we also are having to decide where those grants go as well. A few questions that came up in the chat. There was a question about fixed place for equipment storage. I think that's a really good suggestion, and we'll take a look at that. We definitely have that at a lot of other courts that we have in the Parks Department. So we can take a look at that. Let's see. So in terms of once construction starts, how long will it take? So I think that's going to be a matter of us being able to give a better answer for that once we have a conceptual design, because we don't have that design right now. We really don't know how in-depth the project might be. So at our next meetings, when we have a better sense of what that concept is, we'll be able to have a better answer for the amount of time that construction would happen. But like someone mentioned here, we are talking about starting after after Juneteenth. And we always want to try to get the construction done as quickly as possible so people can get back to using it. But again, we'll have more information a little bit later. Oh, and you guys are welcome for listening. That's why we're here. So I appreciate the thank you, but that's why we're here tonight, to listen. Any other thoughts before, next steps. There we go, Kyle. So the next steps, we're going to have, we're going to finish the site analysis and start looking at concepts based on the feedback that we got tonight, looking at what is actually possible out there spatially. And then we'll have more community meetings this winter to talk about concepts. Like we said, maybe out in the field to be able to stake those out so that people can actually have a good sense of what we're talking about. And then again, the project website is there. I dropped a bunch of links in the chat. We'll also put those, I can send out an email to everyone that was on this to make sure you guys have those. And I just want to say thank you for all of the input tonight and appreciate everybody joining us.